Hi, I'm Simon from SafetyLink and welcome to the Tech Talk for 2026. Today I'm with Oscar, our head engineer. We're going to talk about the new standard 5532 that was released in September this year. Oscar, some of the changes that have happened, yes, we've discussed this previously before, but we're going to go into a little bit of depth to give people a greater understanding of the work that's behind it. It's not a just simple one test and tick and flick. But I guess the big thing is 2013 to 2025, it's not grandfathered. It has changed the actual testing procedure.
Yes. So the biggest change is to the dynamic testing procedure. So we have here the previous test lanyard that's used and the new test lanyard. So the reason for this change is to try and make a more repeatable style of test. So previously we had a 3-strand, 12mm diameter hawser rope, and batch to batch we could see a significant variance in the peak dynamic load that generates. So what the standard committee has moved to is an 11mm kernmantle rope. This is a static rope. The reasoning behind that is we see a much smaller range in the peak dynamic load achieved with this style of lanyard.
Okay, so the lanyard has changed to give us a more consistent and repeatable result when producing the dynamic test on the rigid structure. So we're eliminating another potential.
Yeah, so that's another change. So in previous 5532 2013, we only did testing on the actual substrate that the product was going to be installed on in the field. The new version has split that, and we actually do testing on both what is known as a rigid structure and the substrate that it's going to be installed on in the field.
So back to the rigid structure and the changing of the lanyard, we're reducing the I guess the tolerance, we're making it tighter. So obviously it's quite clear in the standard that your test or your rigid structure can't move more than a couple of mil to help minimise that, as well as the new lanyard. Yeah,
so the definition of the rigid structure is no more than 1mm deflection under 2 tons of load. A structure like we have behind us here will achieve that, and actually the first test we have to do for 5532 2025 is a dynamic test using the new lanyard with the product installed on the rigid structure here.
Okay.
We perform this test with the load cell in line with the anchor to record the load, the peak load that is experienced by that anchor.
Okay. So we do the dynamic test on the rigid structure, we obtain the readout.
Yep.
Then we do a static test on the rigid structure as well. So we're testing the anchor to make sure that obviously the anchor's not going to fail.
Yes, so the static test is to the rated, on the rigid structure is to the rated load of the anchor. So if you have a 15 kilonewton rated anchor, that's the 15 kilonewton static test that it sees there.
Okay, so then we move into the dynamic and static testing actually on the structure, that being roof sheeting or whatever it is.
Yep.
So we then do the dynamic test to make sure it obviously withstands the fall with the same lanyard, and then we move into a static test on the structure.
Yes.
But the static test load we put on has to be the load that we received on the rigid dynamic test, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. So what we see here is based on how well the product absorbs energy, there is a reduction in the required static test on the installation substrate. As a trade-off here, which actually makes it slightly more difficult to pass the test, is we are performing a dynamic test, and then immediately after we're performing the static test. The roof structure, the anchor, the product cannot be changed at all. It is one product gets tested dynamically, again with a new test lanyard, and then that static load is applied to the same structure and to the same product.
Okay. So I guess one of the reasons we're talking about it today is we just want to make it clear to the market that there is a change from 2013 to 2025. And the test methodology, or the way we go about the test, has changed in regards to obviously the lanyard and how we go about testing it. The reason being is especially on rigid structure, we're trying to take out any force that's reduced by a roof sheeting or anything like that. So hence why we test on a rigid structure with the lanyard to show the energy absorption from the anchor itself and not the structure,
Yes.
and that's when we apply that load. I guess the other thing from our perspective is testing to 5532. Oscar and I are only speaking off camera, that just in our product range itself, it's well in excess of 1,000 tests. So building roofs, constructing it, doing the test, recording. As everyone can imagine, I'll use a frog linking as an example. There are many different types of roof sheeting there are, not only in Australia, but around the world as well, that we conduct a lot of testing for, is quite substantial in this. So we just wanted to reach out today, let you guys know what we're up to and how we're going. We're currently still in the process of testing. We've obviously ticked a few boxes, and everyone will be seeing soon what those are and how we're going. Oscar, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Good. Thanks, everyone.